In this week's episode of Studio Inter, we'll be discussing Inter's historic debacle in the Champions League. We'll be reviewing the Cagliari game as well as previewing the Napoli and Spezia games, this week's Moggi, Moratti and Frog, and much, much more. Everything here on Studio Inter, only on SempreInter.com. Benvenuti, bentornati to another edition of Studio Inter. I'm your host, Nima Tavallaey, wishing you back to a week where Inter won't be playing European football in the new year for the first time in, I think, 4 years, if I'm not mistaken. Which we'll get into all of that before we get into all of that, let me introduce my panelists, starting with the SempreInter preview writer, Mr. Mohamed Nassar. How are you?
I'm very well. How are you? All good?
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm going to be... You're going to work for your Mr. Positivity money today, because I really want to hear the spin on this one, because I don't see how this is good for Inter at all, to not have any European football after New Year. Honestly, that worries me. But we'll get to all of that. Let's introduce the other panelist, our good friend from London, Mr. William Beckman.
Hello. It's only 3 years since we had a spring without Europe, Nima. So
is it only 3?
We're more familiar to us than than you're letting on. We'll be fine. Well, we will be.
And we're also joined by our good friend. He writes a weekly feature on SempreInter.com called What We Learned from Inter This Past Week. Welcome back, Mr. Jake Smalley.
Good evening. At least we don't have to play Ludogorets.
Yeah,
that's a bonus, isn't it?
Every cloud, no Ludogorets, and that's the good thing. Yeah, but that's last time you were here. We did speak about how we preferred to finish last over finishing third and playing the Ludogorets League, as we've unceremoniously named the Europa League. Let's start with the Champions League debacle, because it was a debacle. Real Madrid did exactly what you'd expect Real Madrid to do. They won because they needed to win to be secure, be certain of going through to the next round of the Champions League. And of course, for the third year running, Inter had it all in their own hands, and they bottled it. And they bottled it in a way that was rather historic, because Inter have never finished last in their Champions League group ever. And no Europa League football, which we all kind of said we preferred, to be honest. But this is a debacle. In no uncertain terms financially, because Inter had definitely budgeted for Champions League money or Europa League money to lessen the blow of the effects of COVID, of not being able to have any spectators and any match day revenue at all. So this is quite the blow. And that's just the financial aspect. But from a sporting side, I'm sensing, because I've seen a lot of people say that maybe this is good for Inter's title winning chances. I don't know, but I thought we discussed that. I'm going to start with you, Mo. Serie, I mean, first start with the game. I mean, how frustrating wasn't that to watch? Inter, what was Conte doing? And the changes came too late. In terms of, that was a game where Inter had to win it. And the first half was pretty controlled, but the second half was awful. Do you agree?
Yeah, I agree. But it's just one of those games. Look, it was one of those games. The Lautaro crossbar. It was clear. It was going to be one of those nights. It just the boys seemed extremely frustrated. I don't think it was a tactical thing. I don't think it was a technical issue. I think it was mentality. I think the team needs to develop mentally. I think it was clear from Lukaku's body language. It was clear from everyone on the pitch that they really were too revved up for this game. It wasn't. There was no flow state football at all. It was extremely agitated. Beyond maybe the first 25 minutes after that initial blitz, when that Lautaro miss and so on and so forth, it became a downward spiral, and I don't know who takes responsibility for that. I mean, it's it's pretty harsh pointing the finger towards any one entity, whether it's just the players or the club or the coach or the whatever. I feel like this is sort of like baggage, emotional baggage of the last few years. And the same way we needed the Vecino miracle to bring us back into the Champions League against Lazio, we kind of maybe needed a D'Ambrosio miracle to break the duck. But for me, this particular match, like you said, was lost. What was lost at some point in time, midway through the first half. It was just it was too much for them to take, and maybe a bit of shadows of the Sevilla final and the Europa League as well. I think the team needs to mature mentally in those particular crunch times more than anything else. But that was my takeaway from the game.
I think when it comes to the mental part, I think we all can agree that Inter need to develop mentally. But I'm not sure I quite agree with you on the tactical point of view. I thought the first half was controlled, and I think that was the smart way to go, given that a draw would have in the other game would have completely put Inter to made Inter's game moot point, for Inter's sake at least. But the way Conte managed that second half, or lack thereof, and the lack of a plan B when you need to push, and the changes he made when he made them, I'm not. To me, that is Conte's fault. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm not. I'm not saying Conte is blameless.
No,
But what I mean
I
is,
get that.
I would argue that had those changes been made, it would barring some like a fortuitous intervention, like I said, the D'Ambrosio winner off the back post or something of the sort. It seemed like mentally they had already resigned themselves to frustration and not getting the desired result. That's that's
yeah.
all I'm saying.
I think we all agree on that. I don't think there's much to. Like there was no doubt about that there is an issue there. But where are you on this, Will? Do you agree with Mo there, or do you see more of a if this is a mental issue more than a tactical issue in that particular game, or what do you think?
No, I agree more with you, Nima. I think Conte deserves to have a lot of criticism for this match, mostly because it was basically a carbon copy of the first match when we played Shakhtar in Ukraine. We were the better team in the first half, started very well. We're unlucky not to be ahead at half time. But then once plan A hadn't worked, we just sort of faded into nothingness in the second half. And if anything, at the end, it looked like Shakhtar were going to be the team that potentially scored. They certainly felt like they had more of the ball in the second half. Which is curious, given that we'd been on top throughout the first half, and as you said, the changes were too slow. Maybe even if you add in the mental baggage, which I agree was clearly there. This being something that's happened for 3 years in a row now, I don't think that gets Conte off the hook for taking so long to bring on Eriksen or to bring on Sanchez. To have Perisic on before both of them, I thought was weird, honestly. So yes, there were chances, and if you look at the stats, Inter had a 1.84 xG against 0.4 for Shakhtar. So you can definitely say without any qualms that if there'd been a team that deserved to win, it was certainly us. But that's not as given the stakes that are at hand, that's not enough to say that we create the chances and then once they didn't go in, we gave up. I would say that. While I agree this is a problem that predates Conte, this is a problem that Conte was in part brought in to get rid of, because this was, he is the man who's supposed to bring the winning mentality, and it's clear from that match that he hadn't done it. So I don't think that. While I think it's true that was, it's not just that he made the wrong decisions, but it's true that if that is still a problem that's still there, 18 months or so into his tenure, then I find it very difficult to not give him the most of the responsibility for that. Now, this isn't me saying that I think Conte is a dreadful manager or anything, but you have to be honest. I don't think he really got. He didn't play this right. And it was just obvious that once Real Madrid had gone 2-0 up, and we'd all realised after half an hour that actually this Biscotta wasn't going to happen, and you saw that Inter had wasted chances and it was 0-0. You thought, of course, this is what happens. We were in the position where a win takes us through, and we don't do it. That's the most logical and explicable way that this all ends. And unfortunately,
it's PSV. It's Barcelona and now this.
Well, can I just say, I was thinking about this earlier, right? We've had 3 seasons in the Champions League. Each year, I think the group that we've been drawn in has got slightly easier. And I think each year our squad has got slightly stronger. Yet each year we've taken a point less, 8, 7, and now 6. And so therefore the scale of the failure has increased each time. And if the first 2, there were some mitigating factors, it was our first year. We were playing Barcelona in the last game. This is inexcusable in every way that you look at it. There's no refereeing decisions or injuries or COVID cases that justify a failure this big. And I would just like to add another bit of history. You said it's the first time we finished bottom of our Champions League group. We're also the first Italian team to be knocked out in the group stage of the Champions League for 3 seasons in a row. And what that tells me is that, clearly what that tells me is that we're good enough to be in the competition, because if you're a fluke, if you're a one-off, then you don't get back in the 3 seasons in a row by finishing. You don't finish high enough in the league to be in it 3 times in a row. So structurally and financially, this is where we should be. And yet we always underperform when we get there, which makes things even worse.
Very good point. Jake, what do you make of it? Where are you on the scale of the tactical and mental thing?
I think a lot of it is mental, isn't it? I think, like you both just touched upon, the manager was brought in to change that ultimately. So the blame does lie at his door. And I think the players must mentally suffer from the fact they can see a manager unwilling to change his team, unwilling to sort of divert from what he knows the best. And that's the biggest problem for me as a whole. I think you can look at the game as an isolated incident. Like Mo said, that shot against the crossbar, that goes in 2 inches lower. All we have in this conversation is in depth as what we are. But the big picture is, it falls down to the manager with his team. He's been backed more than any Inter manager ever, arguably. Like Will's just said, the team's stronger than what it was last year, yet it's done a lot worse. It's had an easier group. And there's no excuse when it comes to Shakhtar either. Inter had played Shakhtar, 3.5 months ago. And as much as Conte likes to go on about how much they've changed, they've not changed a massive amount. It's the same, pretty much the same Inter, if not a slightly stronger Inter, that beat them 5-0. So it is tough because, like we mentioned there, you throw too many eggs in one basket in the first half and you go all gung-ho and it costs you because, let's not forget, if Shakhtar had won that game, they'd have gone through. So, it is difficult and there is fine margins, but for me, ultimately, it's the big picture. And the big picture is this inflexibility of the manager to stray from his known system to react to and making substitutes. Why on earth was Alexis Sanchez not brought on far earlier? He came on, he was direct, he was fast, he was creating chances, and he was scaring them. Why did it take that long?
What was Ashley Young doing on the pitch? Period.
Well, why? Just why? Like, what's the point though? What's it achieving? But this is the thing as well. That you've got a squad now that is rounded to his style of play. Say he does go, you're stuck with all these wing back / left back / winger / type players, and it's just not flexible at all. And I just find it bizarre. I mean, I knew as soon as I was watching the game and I had Real Madrid on the other channel as well, and I'm like just checking over. And I thought, well, that's Real Madrid 2-0 up, so that's into guaranteed to go out because half the job's done for them. All they have to do is tap it in. It's like Happy Gilmore, just tap it in, but they just can't do it. They just can't do it. It's just bizarre. And you have got to put it at the manager's door for me. It's just really, really frustrating because I wasn't aware of that stat. The team's got weaker each year. That frightens me. And I definitely agree. I don't know about you, but the groups have been easier year by year, I think. And to have it in your hands like that, throw it away.
This year for sure. I mean, this year for sure. There's not much to argue as to this is the simplest group Inter have been in. The first year I thought was pretty difficult, but this is.
And that was the one we got closest to getting out of.
Yeah, exactly. It's
we won our first 2 games.
One of the teams for the final as well from
we're going to get out of the group.
Yeah, exactly. No, you're absolutely right.
And, but since then, we've won 3 Champions League games out of 16. So after winning those first 2 group games in the first season, we won 3 games out of 16.
No, that's absolutely awful. And the worst thing about that is that this is a Shakhtar team that Inter completely mopped the floor with a couple of months ago in the Europa League. It's pretty much the same team. There's not much difference here. It's not like it was a year ago. We're talking 4 or 5 months that they played Shakhtar 3 times. Once they destroyed them, and then twice they've dominated against them, and they failed to score. I mean, I mean, you can blame. I know that the stat about Lautaro Martinez is hitting the post and the woodwork 4 times in the group stages, and that's bad luck, sure, but. To me, the thing that really set me off the edge was his infantile behavior after the game. When he goes up against Fabio Capello, who has won the Champions League, not once or twice, I think even, he's won, this is Fabio Capello, it's one of the most decorated managers in world football, in Italian football, one of the best ever. And this infantile behavior where he goes up against him, squares up against him and says, when Capello asks him, "Do you have a plan B?" and he says, "Yeah, but I'm not going to tell you on TV, am I?" I mean, the intellectual level.
Come on, Nima. Capello is just taking the fucking piss.
No, he's not. He's asking him a difficult question. He deserves to be criticized. Do you have a plan B? Because I mean, if you look at the whole interview, he starts having a go at that Sky lady because she says, "Do you Inter have taken a step backwards?" Just exactly what Will described with facts. He literally tells her, "Think before you open your mouth," and has a go at her. Capello then responds and says, "Well, what we saw until what you waited to do. What is your plan B?"
I think the press are, there are certain managers that the press love to shit on. I think Mourinho for sure, and Conte as well.
Conte is the most protected manager in Italian football. They never criticize him.
When they're wound up,
he's the most paid manager in Italian football.
Yeah.
You're going to get harder questions the more money you earn and the more you're expected and the bigger track record you have.
I don't know. I think there's a certain manner through which questions are asked, and there's a certain number of buttons that everyone knows how to push with certain managers, because they know that this is the exact sort of reaction that question would garner, and it is what it is. It is what it is. I mean, how many times have we spoken about Conte post loss blowouts? It's behavior that happens. How many times are we going to get shocked by this? This is what happens. The guy is wound up. He just got knocked
shocked by it.
No, I'm not shocked by it either. I'm more annoyed by it that he behaved like a child. No, I'm not shocked by it. I think that he shouldn't behave like a child. I mean, he's been responsible for one of the worst failures in Inter's history, whilst also being the manager that's been backed the most in Inter's modern history. And he goes off on a childish tantrum, embarrassing himself when he's being asked critical questions.
But then where do we go from here? So this is the situation that we have. What do we do? I mean, what do we? It's what's next?
That's a good question. I'm really glad that you brought it up. I'm really glad you brought up where do we go from here, because that's a really, really valid question. What do Inter do from here on now? Because the race for the top 4 is tighter than ever before. You have between places 1 to 6 only 6 points after 11 games. Now, obviously, that's going to crystallize itself even more, but it definitely shows that it's tighter than it's ever been before. Inter don't have the financial muscles to be able to sign much in January. They won't be able to sell Christian Eriksen for the money they need to make up for him, not to make a loss in capital gains, which means that they'll probably have to send him on loan, and they probably have to end up signing someone on loan, hopefully. I mean, this is a mess. And at the same time, Inter can't afford to sack Antonio Conte because he earns 12 million euros net after taxes per year until June 2022, whilst also having to pay Spalletti between 5 to 7 million euros net until next June. And you also have the interesting thing of the Chinese government putting impositions in place on capital leaving China because of the effects of the COVID crisis. So Suning can't pump money into Inter either. A lot of sponsors haven't paid what they're supposed to. Inter are in a right mess right now. It's quite. I mean, let's not kid ourselves. It's a mess.
The Shakhtar game alone cost Inter 11.3 million euros. Because there's 9.5 for just getting through to the last 16 as a bonus, and the difference in prize money between a draw and a win is 1.8 million. So, that match on its own is quite a.
It could have paid for Conte. It could have paid to set Conte.
I don't know. Mo, I do want to hear from you though, Mo. Seriously, I want to hear your opinion here. I mean, to me, it's like defending him. I mean, it's not about being anti-Conte or pro-Conte. I think some of the things where it doesn't matter who the coach is, but he has to kind of take some responsibility for how he behaves. I
Yeah, I
mean,
just think I think what annoys people about Conte is his reaction to adversity, and I think that's neither here nor there. I think results are the only thing that matter,
mhm,
and uh, from where I'm stood, I think this is actually a potentially a good thing. Sure, we might have lost
Here we go.
some revenue,
yes, yes.
we might have lost some revenue in terms of progression out of the group, etc. But really, what does it matter if we get knocked out in the round of 16 or the quarterfinals or whatever? Really, what does it matter? Especially if it compromises our chances of winning the Scudetto. So now my whole outlook is built on the fact that I think we're going to win the Scudetto this year. I think under Conte and this team, we are the strongest combination of manager and squad in Italy, and I think the rule of averages works out over an entire season. And it's clear, our defense is only getting better, but we're already 3 goals ahead of the nearest next strongest attack. So it's we're probably the best team out there, and
Well,
we've seen Milan. Milan's
I want to
run.
bring in a stat. I want to bring in a stat
Yeah.
that speaks to your point actually, and that's the fact that when he's out of Europe, Conte, when he only has one game a week to prepare, like his first season at Juve, like his first season at Chelsea, then he runs away with the league.
Exactly. I mean, this is something. So if you believe that we're going to win the Scudetto, I'll take winning the Scudetto and getting knocked out, fourth in the group,
Absolutely,
humiliated in Europe, and any day, any day.
absolutely, absolutely.
And this is what I think. I've said this from the beginning. This is what I think is going to happen this season. I think we're going to win the league, and if we do, I'm all for it. So we're going to make more money by winning the league. The team wins silverware. It's a real step towards genuine progression. We do another
Absolutely.
season under Conte, and then transition into manager X or Y, who then allows the team to develop and play more continental type of football, and then probably become a more respected force in Europe. But I think things need to be sequentially built. You can't do everything at the same time. And
But that I
that's
see, I agree with that. But you see that whole thing is hinges on Inter winning the Serie A. That entire everything you're saying is hinging on Inter winning the Serie A. And to be honest with you, I don't see that happening. I honestly
but
don't see that happening.
that's yeah. I get that. That's why I said like my positivity is built on that one thing. And if we disagree on that, or
Well,
if
if
we
we
see things
don't win,
differently, then yeah.
well, that's the thing. If we don't win the Serie A,
But I still I don't think, looking at the tally at the end of the season, if we don't win the Serie A and we get knocked out of Europe in the round of 16, but we come in second, or we leave out of the group stage, it doesn't really matter. Like as a general, like a tally of a season's achievements, what does it really matter? If we get knocked out, except for the 11 odd million euros that
well, it's more than that
will
because you
go a
get
long way.
well, it's more than that, Mo. It's much more than that. That's just the 11 million from the match from just you get from TV pool. You get a percentage of the TV rights money as well, depending on how high up you know how far you get in the Champions League. I think it matters quite a lot for players wanting to come to Inter, whether they come to a team that finishes fourth in the Champions League in their group stages, rather than a team that actually makes it to a quarterfinal or a round of last 16. I mean that to me makes a lot. I think it matters a lot whether or not Inter finish first or second, especially after having backed this guy the way Inter have, in a way that no Inter coach, like Jake said, in Inter's modern history has been backed. I think it matters hugely. I mean, we
Yeah, no,
can't
but
just
I mean,
rationalize that.
if we're coming second and getting knocked out of the group, or coming second and getting knocked out of the round of 16, I don't think this is the the determining factor into calling a season a success or a failure. I think the mandate for the season is to win a trophy, and we weren't going to win the Champions League, right? So I think I think
Okay.
if
No, I
come
get
May
you.
or June, come May or June, the success of the season is contingent upon winning a genuine trophy, whether it's the Coppa Italia or the Scudetto or the Champions League or the Europa League, for that matter. Had we finished the group in third place, I think, with Tottenham being the team they are, and them being in the Europa League, it was a stretch this year to think that Inter would have had a stronger run in the Europa League. The Champions League was definitely out of the question. So we're looking at either the Scudetto or the Coppa Italia. So if we come to May or June and look back at the season and we've won actual silverware, I'm happy, because this is real progress. And I think then that particular incident midweek last week is forgotten. But that's my 2 cents.
Okay, that's why we call you Mr. Positivity. You don't just sit here and just say it's going to be all right. You actually have a thought process behind it, and I love that. We'll see. I mean, the game, it is what it is. It's out. But then Inter went against Cagliari, a game that became monumentally important because of how Inter Serie A season, which is where it's at right now. And it's incredibly important for Inter. For me, as I've said throughout the season, for me, it's about finishing top 4, because I'm scared beyond this is my nightmare, that Inter misses top 4. I think the disaster that this would be is it would take about half a decade to recover from. I think so that's why I'm and also mentally, like we've all spoken about, the Cagliari game became so much more important because Inter came off the back of 3 wins in the Serie A, and a 4th would have made it quite a run going into the Napoli game, and also putting pressure on Milan, who also dropped points later on in the night. So it was a monumentally important win, and to win it the way they did, this is the thing that frustrates me a little bit, and we got to talk about this. Christian Eriksen was not good enough to play against the Shakhtar that parked the boat and the bus and the plane for 90 minutes, but against Cagliari he could start, and then he starts really well that first game. But then we see Conte yelling at him to go back to defend deeper, which he does. He goes out of the game and he's subbed off. I mean, what is going on here? What a state of affairs this is. And it's like, it's literally, it gets worse by every game. It's like, why start him against Cagliari, which is not as important of a game like as against Shakhtar? You bring him on in the 80th minute, and to be honest, I mean, the Italians have this thing called sliding doors based on that film. I mean, that his left-footed shot against Shakhtar, if that had gone in,
can you
oof.
imagine?
Can you just imagine
Eriksen
put Inter through to the Champions League?
Conte would have been even angrier than he was with us getting eliminated if Eriksen put us through.
It would have made it quite interesting, but it didn't happen. So, but it is what it is. But then you saw in the second half where Inter played worse than they did in the first half, but scored 3 goals. It's, to me, when he changed to a back 4, to me that suggests that he's a coach that's a little bit, that he's panicking, that his first idea, the 3-5-2, this marching band that you always talk about, that doesn't work. So you panic and you go to a 4-3-2-1, which he doesn't want to play anyway, because that's not his football. And then you scramble out a win. To me, you're relying a little bit on luck there when you do that. And a team that relies on luck does not win silverware. That's what that tells me. I suspect you disagree, or Mo. I suspect you disagree.
Yeah, look, I unfortunately I didn't watch the match live because it was an early Sunday game and I was at work. I caught it later. I'd been following it on Twitter at the time, so I didn't really know what Cranio's performance was like in the first half. That was what's his name? Conciliesque. Yeah, look, we won the game 3-1, deservedly so, and I think nothing else really matters. We were saved by Santo Danilo again, and I think we're being it's a bit harsh to say Conte never changes. He has no plan B, but when he changes to plan B, then he's panicking. Look, we won the game. It was a very important game. It was, mentally, it was like you just said. It was very important to get the 3 points, convincingly, deservedly so. Going to Sardinia is never an easy out for anyone. And sure, it had to be a miraculous goal to break the deadlock, or not to break the deadlock, to pull one back, and then D'Ambrosio had to come back in and save us. So, but I don't. For me personally, I don't know what else to say about this game except 3 points, great performance. We both mentally, tactically, and in terms of a result as well. That's from where I stand. I don't see anything really negative with this game. I just want to say about Eriksen, and this is something that's frustrated me as an Inter fan through, like, there always seems to be some sort of player that the fans love and the coaches don't, for whatever reason. And I don't know why, but I always find myself signing on the coach's side, whether it was Recoba initially, and then it was Kovacic, and now it's Eriksen. Like, I don't know what's going to happen with Eriksen. I don't know if he's going to move on and become, break out into a world-class trequartista or playmaker in some other team, or I don't know if another Inter manager is going to come and still be faced with an Eriksen dilemma, the same way that Dybala is a difficult puzzle to fit, or a piece of puzzle to fit in a team. But it really it's starting to seem like the Kovacic saga all over again, And then we've seen, Kovacic, Real Madrid, Chelsea. He's a decent player, but he really was not the player, like the godsend son of Lamb of God, who was supposed to be the Inter savior, and screw all these managers for not being able to play him, and blah blah blah. So I fear that my position, is always like reactionary to reactions, and I feel like a bit of a contrarian. I feel like all this flack that managers or Conte is getting for not playing Eriksen, or seemingly not being able to fit Eriksen in, is making me kind of dislike Eriksen a bit. But yeah, that's a small confession.
Yeah, I hear you. Well, Jake, I want to hear your thoughts on the Cagliari game. One thing we need to talk about, like, I don't think that what happened with, Sotil's goal was fantastic. Let's be honest, but Handanovic is a statue now. And it's not that, I want him to alibi throw himself. I'm not one of those people who wants to, oh, why didn't he throw himself? Well, you're not there. You didn't see what he sees. And of course he wants to, unless you think that he doesn't want to save the ball, he's not going to throw himself if it's, just to make it look good on TV. But this is getting a problem because he is not saving anything anymore. Every time Inter's first shot on goal every time Inter concede a shot on goal, it goes in. The first one, and it's really, really becoming a problem now. And Sotil, I just mean that generally. And Sotil's goal was absolutely phenomenal. I don't think a goalkeeper in the world could have saved that. But it's getting ridiculous now. No? Jake?
Yeah, I've not seen a player regress like Handanovic for quite a while. I think you could even argue that before lockdown he was still looking quite solid. But you look back at that Torino game just afterwards with the Belotti incident. That, for me, was almost a bit of a signal for the end for Handanovic. It's sad to see, and what makes me more sadder is the fact that he's been such a great servant to the club. He's broke plenty of records, penalty saving heroics and things like that, and he's had to play in a pretty garbage team the majority of the time that he's been there. And just as the team start to get a bit of investment and competing more on all fronts, he's waning. But one thing I can say about the Cagliari game is it did give Inter a chance to have a look at a man that I would put on a list of replacements for him. Conchili was mentioned just there, and I think Cranio could potentially be, in that category. As in he's, just has wonder games against Inter, but for me, he's someone that they've got to be looking at. I quite like the idea of Juan Musso as well at Udinese. I think, in the next few months, that's what needs to happen. It needs to be accelerated up the list of priorities is in getting a new goalkeeper. But there's so much to sort of delve into with the squad. For me, I still think we're short of a left-sided wing back. If we're going to keep Conte as manager, you're looking at Ivan Perisic, who just needs to go. Like, it's over now. There's no Icardi for him to cross to. There's no point anymore. I don't see what he brings the same. He holds himself back a bit. He's not really high on confidence. He doesn't really know what he's doing in that role. Ashley Young, veteran, not deemed good enough for Man United. And then if you play anybody else, you play them out of position, aren't you? You're not going to play Kolarov there either because I've not seen him for a while. I'm presuming he's in a wheelchair now. But I think there's a few roles in that team that I'd have potentially said were priorities. That left-sided role, and obviously if Eriksen's going to go, get a replacement for him. But it is starting to become a bit of an issue with the goalkeeper. It's starting to become really at the forefront that every single time there's a shot on goal, it makes it more frustrating because the majority of the time this happens, Inter are on top in the game. Looking quite comfortable. The Atalanta one, Moranchuk's goal. I mean, he was a little bit missighted, but Inter were comfortable. 1-0 up, looked quite simple. And then a really daft goal gets let in. And you just think, well, if you're going to defend pretty solidly, you're going to be on the front foot all the time. Yeah, you are going to get hit on the break every now and again. And if they score every time, it's going to cost you points. So, yeah, I think we've got to start looking at a short list of goalkeepers to replace. I mean, I don't know if you have any suggestions who you'd pick maybe as an option. I'm not. It's hard to say, isn't it? It is hard to say.
Well, where are you on all of this?
Well, on Handanovic, I don't have anything else to add. He's not good enough. And if we start next season with him as our first choice keeper, then we'll pay for it. I don't think there's much more to say on him than that. I think Cragno and Musa are probably the two most obvious solutions in terms of Serie A goalkeepers. I think if you swap those goalkeepers around yesterday, we would have won it 5-0. Honestly,
Probably.
I think that for once, I feel for Conte when he says that we created lots and didn't score, because I think Cragno pulled off 3 or 4 really good saves in the first half, and I didn't have any problem really with the first half performance. It was just a sort of a bit of a sort of a freak scenario that we went in 1-0 down. But yeah. Cragno and Musa are separated by 2 months in terms of birth, so they're pretty much exactly the same age. We want someone who's going to be in goal for several years, so preferably someone who's maybe sort of not in his mid 20s at the oldest, if that's possible. But yeah, Samir has done his time, unfortunately, and we have to hope that he doesn't cost us too many goals in important moments of matches for the remainder of the season.
No, I agree. Mo, I mean, you've been banging on the Handanovic thing for quite some time. I'm keen to hear. I mean, this is not what we're seeing now. He's never been like this before.
Yeah. I mean, look, the first Mancini season when he was a great shot stopper, and I was criticizing him still for those misses. I mean, if he was an 8 out of 10 then he's like a 2 today. Yeah, I'm like both Jake and Will said. The less said about him, the better, because he's been, despite his earlier flaws in stopping certain shots, he's always been a great servant to the club, and he's been a very good captain last year. So I don't want to rail on him too much, but it's clear for everyone to see. And like Will said, I think I can't remember if it was Jake or Will, but if you're playing attacking football, you will be broken. There will be a fast break or two against you, and if each fast break ends up on a shot on target, and that shot on target is a goal, you're going to drop points, and you really can't afford to do that if you're aiming to win the Scudetto. So, yeah, I mean, thank you very much, Samir, but
yeah. No, he needs to be phased out. He needs to be a backup goalkeeper, because this situation is getting ridiculous. And he makes saves, but he makes those obvious saves that any goalkeeper at that level can make. He doesn't make any saves that you can ask of a goalkeeper that is supposedly a captain and is supposed to lead his team to the Scudetto title or any title. It's really, really awful. And the way I look at it, I mean, I love Cragno. He's been a favorite of mine for a long time, and I rate Musso so highly too. But Inter can't afford them. They don't have any money. To me, the only goalkeeper that right now Inter can afford, and it makes sense financially, and I think that he's someone that could end up playing for Inter, given the amount of business between these two clubs, It's Silvestre at Hellas Verona, who's having a phenomenal season, and he's not just this season, but the season before that, and he's looking really, really good. And he's only 29 years old. You know, he's ready now to take that next step. I think that's where Inter are financially, and that's why those Champions League money matters, because this is the difference between that is the difference between buying Silvestre or buying Cragno. And I think what's happened there, it's leaning more to Silvestre than it is, unless something magical happens.
It's the difference between shopping in the €100 restaurant and the €40 restaurant, isn't it?
€20 restaurant or whatever
Yeah.
it was, whatever it was he said. Yeah, right. Let's. I mean, we have a game against Napoli, which is monumentally important now, and because if Inter win that game and Milan drop points again, which they could do because they play Sassuolo, who are a tricky side.
They're playing Genoa.
They're playing Genoa. Yeah, then they're playing Sassuolo. Genoa caused Juve all sorts of problems this weekend, and I think they can do the same against Milan. I mean, if Inter can win that, and Napoli are good. Napoli are a good team, and they're also one of those teams that are up there fighting for the Scudetto. They're in third place, and if we take away that whole thing that happened with Juve, they probably would be in second, if not, to be honest. So this is it. This is one of those games. If you're going to win the Scudetto, you can't afford to lose this. And I really. Inter should be thanking their lucky stars that Osimhen will miss this game, because Osimhen on the counterattack against this Inter, that and Handanovic in the form he's in, no, thank you. But having said that, what kind of game do you think we'll see, Mo? And what do you think is like? How big of a chance do you give Inter to win this?
Yeah, my only concern is that it comes midweek, and I would have liked this game to have been 7 days or 6 days removed from the match against Cagliari. We were all surprised by the end of season performance against Napoli last season, a few months ago, the Atalanta-Napoli games where we won both, despite them being concerning. So I'm kind of hoping it's that sort of game where really Conte and the side. I mean, the gap between Conte and Gattuso on paper is far bigger than the gap between the two squads, because I think Napoli's starting 11 are just as good as any starting 11 in the Serie A. But I think overall, I would like to believe that Inter are going to take the 3 points. I think knowing that this is all they have to play for will really light a fire under their bums, and hopefully we put in a strong performance, a controlled performance, and like you said, the fact that Osimhen is missing, cannot be understated for in Inter's favor. We're very fortunate. Unfortunately for him, he's a joy to watch. So it's all the best, and hopefully he makes that recovery, because
he's a fantastic player.
Yeah, and it was like anytime one of those injuries is compounded by poor first aid, you never really know how the injury is going to set, or how he's going to recover. So I wish him all the best. But having said that, we're really fortunate not to have him play against us. And like you said, on the counterattack against Handanovic in this current state, he would have caused us all sorts of trouble. So long story short, I hope I'm apprehensive, but I think we're going to win in the end anyway. And I'm going to stop predicting clean sheets ever again. This season. So maybe a cheeky 3-2 with Lautaro.
Yeah, we got one against Shakhtar, didn't we?
Yeah, we got 2 clean sheets against Shakhtar.
Yeah. Defensive.
Every cloud.
That's true.
But I mean, I don't think I think Napoli will score, and I seriously doubt that Inter will keep a clean sheet and be able to keep Napoli at bay. But I have a feeling, and this is my gut feeling, that Inter will win 2-1 against Napoli, but then draw against Spezia. Like, to me, the Spezia game on the Sunday is a bit more of a trap game than the Napoli.
We're in the whole 4 points a week paradigm again.
Yeah, exactly. Do you know what I mean? Because it makes the Napoli win completely pointless if they can't do it against Spezia. So that's my little worry. But having said that, no, I'm gonna. I honestly think that this game against Napoli will be really really good. It'll be really entertaining for those who are neutrals, but I think it'll be a 2-2 draw. That's what I think. What about you, Will?
I don't necessarily think it'll be full of entertainment. I see a tighter game than that. I don't think that, given the way that we're expected to play in a big match now with Conte, with these three central midfielders and a slightly more circumspect approach, I don't expect us to go gung ho for the win, and I don't expect Gattuso to do either. I think he's very very effusive in his praise about Inter. He always has been over the last couple of years, so I expect him to respect us as well. I remember we had that Coppa Italia match. Incredibly, that was this year somehow, in another geological era, though, back in February when it was 1-0. I think something like that. I personally think it'll be a draw, but I think it'll be 1-1. Osimhen's absence is certainly very good. We're going to need a big performance out of Matteo Darmian, who I assume Conte will put up against Lorenzo Insigne. If we can deal with that side of the pitch, we're in business. I don't expect Eriksen to play. I expect the sort of back to the team that we had against Borussia Mönchengladbach in that game a couple of weeks ago with the three central midfielders. But yeah, it's a very big match. I think this will tell us more about Inter than it will about Napoli, if I'm honest. I think this is bigger for us, not just because it's home, but because there's sort of more questions about our form and about our title credentials. So yeah, this is there's a lot at stake, certainly. But I don't think necessarily that we're going to win the match. I think it might be a draw, which would be annoying, but not a disaster at the same time.
Jake?
Well, I think the entire game hinges on that first goal. I think if Napoli get the first goal, it'll be a bit of a stressful evening for Inter. I think if you can let Napoli, as a side that they are, get into the sort of stride, they're pretty unbeatable. But they are similar to Inter in the fact that they can be quite mentally fragile. So if Inter can get that first goal and sort of press on the advantage, try and keep it tight and score a second, I think Inter will win quite comfortably. I think there is more pressure on Inter, like Will said, going into this game, I feel. I think Napoli know that perhaps they can afford to go to San Siro, maybe get beat. And, claw points back at other points to say, well, Inter are a good team. They spent more money than us, this and that. Gattuso has been very respectful towards Inter. So I do think it'll be a tight game. To be honest, I'm trying to sort of steer clear of making a complete prediction. But no, I really think it hinges on that first goal. I think if Inter can get a hold of the game and sort of tame Napoli a little bit, I think they will win it. But if you give Napoli confidence, they can run riot. They proved that when they played Atalanta earlier on in the season. But then you look at the past weekend, they had to roll the dice completely to get anything out of the Sampdoria game after going behind, and that turned out to be Petagna. So, with Osimhen not playing, it is an easier game. There's less fluidity, but the pressure is on Inter solely to get something out of this game, and whether the manager, is flexible enough to do that, I'm not really too sure. I'm gonna have to make a prediction. I'm gonna go 2-2.
Yeah, that's where I am as well. Because I think we're, like Will kind of alluded to, we're in the 4 points a week thing now, and I think 2-2 against Napoli and then a blowout win against Spezia is kind of what I'm expecting, to be perfectly honest. And then you have the final game against Hellas away, which will be really difficult, which we'll talk about next week. Before next week will also be all of us have to we'll also give our little Christmas what we want for Christmas from Inter this year. If we could dream out, if we're allowed to wish freely within reason, of course. But yeah, I thought we'd all do that and do a little review as well. But before we go, we gotta give a shout out to Mike Gallo, who got 3-1 the prediction spot on against Cagliari. He said it will be 3-1, and it was 3-1. But against Spezia, we were not expecting anything else other than a blowout win here, aren't we? Like 3-4-0. Not much to talk about, right? I mean, this is what we're expecting, all of us, or am I just being presumptuous here? Will?
Well, leaving aside the fact that you just said you think that we're going to draw against them if we beat Napoli, I do.
Yeah, well, but I don't think that we're going to win against Napoli. That's the thing.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, I do think.
Yeah, I mean, Spezia have got more points than I expected to in the stage of the season. I thought they'd be lost at this part. They're actually doing quite well. They caused Lazio a lot of problems a couple of weeks ago, but no, they're not good enough to come to San Siro and get a result. So I think regardless of the result against Napoli on Wednesday, there is no excuse for not winning this. Probably 3-0, hopefully 3-0. And then we can move on to hopefully bigger fish to fry in the coming weeks. But no, I don't see anything really to talk about other than, I suspect it will be interesting to see who Conte rotates, because, of the 3 games we've got left before Christmas, that's the one where you'd expect maybe you might rest Lukaku, you might rest a Barella or something like that. So that's the only kind of risk. But even so, I don't see a huge warning sign looming over that match. I'm sure I'll be punished for saying that, but no, I think we'll win.
Lucien Agoume comes in and scores a hat-trick. Jake, where are you? What do you think the Spezia game?
I think if we were playing Spezia maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago, I think it might be a bit tougher. Their result of the weekend was really, really poor. To get battered by such a poor Crotone team, for me, they're the worst team in the league, and that's been proven. That's their first win. So if they're getting battered by a team like Crotone, you can't see anything other than a massive win, really. Looking at it either way as well, you get beat against Napoli, there needs to be a reaction, so let's take it out on Spezia. If it's a draw, well, look, we'll take the draw and let's make sure we beat Spezia. Now we're beating Napoli, we should be buzzing, let's just go and beat Spezia. So 3-4-0, and I'd like to see him make some changes. I mentioned it in my column this week. Get Sanchez playing in that game, get him a bit of confidence, get him a couple of goals. Maybe rotate midfield around a little bit, some of the defenders, get people some minutes, because you never know, a couple of injuries over the Christmas period, those players might have to get thrown in. So, yeah, 3-4-0 for me. I'm going to say 4. Why not? 4-0.
Yeah, I'm gonna say I think 5-1, because we don't ever keep a clean sheet. So I think 5-1. Yeah, I think 5-1 Spezia. Yeah, goal. Yeah, because I mean it's like for me. Yeah. Not in Napoli, but I mean against Spezia, because I said 2-2 against Napoli, but I think 5-1 against Spezia, because this Spezia remind me of Brescia last season, and we destroyed them. So yeah, that's where I'm on that. What do you think, Mo? Before we move on, Spezia game.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a good win. I just why not? Let's go 4-0 as well, like Jake. Jake, if it's not 4-0, I'm blaming you.
Let's move on to the part of the show where we pay tribute, rip the piss out of, and criticize someone or something in the world of football heavily. Starting with the positivity, which will be presented by Mr. Mohamed Nassar.
He works a lot, he's intelligent, and he surprises people sometimes with his ideas. Not easy to find one person all these qualities.
I mean, guys, it can be one of two, just one of two this week. It's either Barella and that amazing goal, and thanking God that we have one of the best midfielders. I mean, probably the best midfield prospect in the world on our team, and one of the best midfielders, prospect or otherwise, in the world on this side. Or it's D'Ambrosio for showing up again. I mean, we've made so much fun of this guy over the years, and rightly so, deservedly so. But there hasn't been a player that shows up with these important goals as much as him. He's eclipsed Vecino many times over in the past couple of seasons anyway already. So it's a toss-up between these two, but I think because Barella is a more complete package, and that performance against Cagliari just showed how important of a player he is to the side, and capped with that amazing goal both in terms of technique and importance. It's got to be Barella this week.
Couldn't agree more. Let's move.
I was going to say, that goal was Inter's 5,000th goal in Serie A in their history. So that was quite a worthy goal to pick up that that milestone. And on D'Ambrosio, by the way, just to back up what Mo said, he's one of only 4 defenders I saw to score 20 goals in Serie A since the start of the 2012-13 season, with Florenzi, Gonzalo Rodriguez and Bonucci. So Inter's Mr. Clutch coming good again at the right moment.
Always on that far post as well. I love it. Love it. Right. Let's move on to something much more comical. This week's Frog, which we presented by Mr. William Beckman.
Clamoroso autogol di Ranocchia.
Yeah, and I'm going to keep us at the Sardinia Arena because I was struggling for a frog, but I think I'm going to give it to the ball boy at the Sardinia Arena. I don't know if you saw this in minute 94 yesterday. Lukaku skips past Cragno and is running towards the goal for what is looking most likely like a tap-in. But as he gets to the goal, he absolutely smashes the cover off the ball to make it 3-1. And the poor ball boy behind the goal, who's very much in the trajectory of the shot, ducks in absolute terror as if Lukaku's going to break the net. And it was I know he's got a powerful shot, but that he's showing very little faith in the goal that he stood in front of. That he was I think it was just an instinctive reaction that he took cover as if someone was, a sniper had come at him. But it was very strange and quite an amusing scene. I hope he didn't hurt himself when he fell down. I don't think he did, but that was the most amusing thing I saw this week. Taking cover from Big Rom. So I'll give it to whatever his name. Unfortunately, I don't know his name, but if he's probably not listening, so it doesn't matter. But, I hope he's okay, and just have more faith in the net that you're stood behind, because I don't think I've ever seen a goal snap open like that in a long time.
No, neither have I. But it was an instinctive reaction, but it looked absolutely hilarious. Right, let's move on to something much more negative. This week's Moggi, which will be presented by Mr. Jake Smalley.
That I've been left with the negative one this week.
But you almost the negativity, didn't we decide that last time? That Moses the positivity and you almost the negativity. Yeah.
It's almost a natural born role for me a little bit. But there's a couple of things I've looked at this week, and I think from an Inter perspective, the whole Conte outburst is definitely something that, we can all do without. I think at the minute it's making Inter quite tiring to watch. It should be more fun than this. After the last few years, all this money's being pumped into the team. We've got a number 9 who's the number 9 that we thought we would get with Mauro Icardi, but we've got it in the form of Lukaku instead. We've got Ashraf Hakimi. Most teams would want him playing for them. Barella. Every game almost seems stressful. If we don't win, it's stressful. If we do win, it's a stress to get there. So Conte's a bit of a Moggi character for me at the moment. But I just want to touch on something that's a little bit of a bigger picture as well for me. In the past, we've had a couple of really bad racist incidents. In the game, we had a bit of an incident in the Champions League last week. I mean, I'm not going to go into too much detail on that one because, we'll only find out a bit more about that in the coming weeks. But I found it really sad what happened between Millwall and Derby the weekend before, and the taking the knee sort of situation. I think it's getting a little bit out of hand now. But the big picture for me is I just can't understand how we can not draw attention to these things, and unless they're dealt with, they're going to be part of our society as it is. And I just find it really, really sad that we're in the position that we're in. 2020, not only 2021, we're still having this conversation, and it's always so negative, especially after what's been a pretty negative year as well. So it's just been it's saddened me a little bit. So the Den faithful and my Moggi, I'm afraid to say. Yeah,
their behavior was pretty shameful, and their own club distanced themselves from it as well. Right, that's all we had time for this week. We'll be back next week, the last Studio Inter of the dreaded, horrible year of 2020. But until then, I'd like to thank all my panelists. I'd like to thank you, Will.
Thank you. 6 points, please.
Yes, please. Mr. Jake Smalley.
Yeah, thank you, sir. I'll second that, Will.
Mr. Positivity, Mo Nassar.
And thank you, Will, for wishing the 6 points instead of the 4. I'm all in as well. Thank you, guys. It was a really good episode. Thank you.
And until next week, I'm your host, Nima, Tavallaey, wishing you health, safety, stay safe, take care of your loved ones, listen to your local authorities. 6 points, and sempre e solo forza.